All right. So this is how are going to set up your script. So your final script, your script 2 is like a rough draft of this, and then your final script. So far, all you've really done is kind of put together a synopsis or a rough draft. But now we're going to go in here and we're going to actually create our script. So the first thing is obviously the title. And if you don't have a title, just use a working title. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Okay. The next is your character analysis. And this is for each of your characters. So, in other words, remember the Dropbox where you had to put down their name and kind of their likes and dislikes and their physical description and their gender and their age and where they originated from. You can go ahead and go right into that Dropbox, copy that information. If you have 3 characters, you're just going to put that, each one will be here. And so then after that, we're going to go to our first page. And on our first page, we most likely will have the title of the book. So the cover will be a little bit different. The inside of the cover is going to be empty. And then the first page will be the title of the book, right? So it'll be the title of the book by, Sarah Metas. Okay, I'm going to say your name wrong, but you know what I mean. So you'll have your title and the author. Then we're going to go into the second page. So we're going to call this, now if you're doing a comic book, it's going to be a little bit different than if you're doing a children's book. But I'm going to go through the comic book first, and then I'll talk a little bit how the children's book would be adapted to that. So we're going to call the pages a capital P for page. So this will be P2. And then we're going to decide how many panels are going to be on a page. So normally, a good rule of thumb is about 4 panels. Sometimes if you have a splash page, that's like a big, thing that's happened, you might have the full page will be 1 panel. Or maybe you'll even go across 2 pages. Okay? So we call those splash pages. But for the most part, you're going to try to keep it around 4 panels. You can go up to 6. That's an awful lot, but I think 4 is pretty good. Now there's videos in the content area of your management system that basically, talk about the number of panels and what they're all about too. And I'm going to talk about panels in a little bit in a different piece. So this would be P1 for panel 1, right? So the first thing we want to do is what's in the panel. Right? So what is in the panel? So we may have what we call an establishing shot. So if we know that we're going to be, in this little town in the middle of a rural area, we may have like an overview or something of the town, right? And maybe there's like a little hook in there, like, somebody's sleeping. Maybe one of the towns has like one of the windows has a light on. So we may say something like small rural town with a moon shining shining overhead and trees in the foreground with one house has a light on. And then we'll go to dialogue. So this will be, what's going to happen. Who's saying what? So let's say our character's name is John, and we will say, I wish I could get to sleep because I wish I could get to sleep. I will miss class if I oversleep. That's it. That's all we see. Now we'll go to, still on page 2, and then panel 2. So now we need to know, what do we got? So we'll have a medium or long shot. We'll say medium shot of John in his bedroom, scrolling on his phone. Let's see. And then what's our dialogue? Let's just make this up as we go. John, what's our dialogue? What are you going to say? Think of anything.
I don't really know.
I don't really know why I can't get to sleep. How about that?
There you go. There you go.
Now, at this point, we're going to continue through going on page 2, dialogue, panel 3, and so on until we get to page 3, right? And when we get to page 3, we start over with panel 1. Now, one thing that's really important when you do these dialogue boxes is that you always have a visual. What am I looking at? What's in the panel? And you can only do one thing in the panel at a time. If you say they went from the front door to the back door and then yelled out the back door and brought the dog in, you can't do that all in one panel, can you? Right? I mean, do you understand kind of what I'm saying there? It's like you have to break it down to visually say what's going on. And you want to be as explicit as possible. Like in this one, this could be interpreted a million ways, the bedroom, right? So we could say red, quilt, blah, blah, blah. We could put in all the things. Like if I say to you, we're going into the Mac lab. Well, what does that mean? Like it's got gray walls and a blue carpeting and it's this and this. So we want to put as much of that visual information as possible because this is what's going to tell you what you need to build. So far, what do we have to build? What do you think we have to build to make this all work? Ellen, what do we have to build? Like in the first shot, what do we have to build?
Like an image that kind of puts us in a setting.
Yeah, but what is the setting? What does it say here?
Oh, sorry. I thought you just meant in general. A small rural town with the moon shining overhead and trees in the foreground.
Right.
One house with a light on.
Right. So if I click to let me just go over here and put that in. And I'm just going to really quickly see what I can find. Let me make this box a little smaller so that it fits in here. Okay. So let's go and look for reference. Small rural town with moon overhead comic. There we go. Let's look at images. Oh boy, here we are. So I kind of want more of an aerial view. Like I don't want to, like this one's pretty good, but it's a little too fantastic. So let me put in aerial view. I think that I can't spell aerial. Anyways, there we have more aerial views of towns. So I like this one. I like the trees in the foreground on this one, but I don't like the lake. So you can see where I could maybe like combine 2 or 3 images, right? Maybe this image, there's the little town, turn all the lights off, just have them quiet except for one little light happening, and there's my balloon with, I wish I could get some sleep. All right. So that's the way that you need to walk through this thing. You need to be able to do it both, visually and in written words. Like you have to be able to have sort of a reference for yourself. Otherwise, it's all in your head. And if you just like say, well, then he did this and she did that, there's no visual. right? We need to know every step of the way what the visuals are going to be. What do you see in your head? You know, if I say they went down the steps, I need to know what kind of steps they are. Is it a circular staircase? Is it like the basement steps? Is it the front steps? Is it, you know what I mean? Is it like the, you know, the steps to the library? I mean, like what kind of steps? They're all different. So I have to put as much information as I can in order to make this work for you. It makes your life easier. Now, do you have to do it all the way through? No. What's going to happen, and I'll be very clear about this, is that you're going to start this. You're going to get to the storybook, you know, 2. Are you ever going to completely finish your final? Probably not. Once we start working in InDesign, you're probably going to finish it out visually. But you have to have a start in order to get into this frame of thinking. So that's really important. In addition to that, there's other information in here that I'm going to want you to watch. So if we go into content, I just want to make sure I'm in the right content area. Yep. So if I go into content and I go down to where our stuff is, there's another video that I'm going to want you to watch. And that's right here under faculty lectures. So here's what we, you know, here's our little gradient mesh tool. Here's our Pathfinder and Align. Here's our you know, an appearance tool that we haven't talked too much about, but it's in there. This is one I want you to look at today. This is all about how to use perspective. But here's also a whole piece on storyboarding. And this tells us a lot about what different, you know, frames, panels, how comic balloons will work, you know, all that kind of stuff. So all of that is in here. And I want you to be able to watch these. So, so I'm hoping that that kind of sets you up for now as to what has to be in here. So does anyone feel like they have any questions or that this is kind of undoable? The other thing you can do too is, which I didn't do, is when we put in dialogue, notice I put the name of the character. So you always want the name of the character. Now, if the character has like a sad face or a, you know, tired face or anything else, I can put that in, right? So here we have one house and it's Jan. We don't know it's Jan yet until we get into the second panel. We know that that's Jan. So Jan is in his bedroom, and I could put in here tired face. Barely keeping his eyes open. Scrolling on his phone. Right? So that it gives you a pretty good idea. So maybe we can even say sitting up, like in his bedroom, sitting. Right? So now I have more information. He's not laying down, he's sitting up. He's in his bed, right? Maybe he's in a chair, you know, so I can put that in there. Depends on what I want to do. But now it starts to tell me some stuff. I have to make a bed. I have to make a chair. I have to make, you know, John sitting up. Or maybe if I put him in his bed, I can cover him up. So I only need his torso. I need to have his hands holding a phone. I need the back of a phone. These are all things that I'm going to build for my, you know, my panel, for that panel. Okay? So that's why this is so important. In addition to that, there's also your mock-up book. Now, we haven't talked about that too much, but that is another area that's going to be really important to you. So let's go back into content. Now, that's coming up later. You're kind of trying to do these, you know, together. So we can see by week 7, we're starting to refine our story, and we have ideas for thumbnails and for covers. Here's our progress report coming up. So this is all you see. There's not a lot happening here until, you know, till we get to our midterm. When we get into the next, so let's get into writing your script. So here's more information on scripts and storyboards. And that's that same video that I have in the other one. I have it in both places. And here's like a whole thing on how to present your storyboard. So you can download that. Also in here are storyboard videos and script videos. So all kinds of stuff. So look ahead. I'm giving you this now so you start thinking about it. Because if you don't start thinking about it, it's like kind of too late. It's like, oh, I got to do it all. But this way, you're already starting to shift your head to think about what your story's about and what it's going to look like visually. And creating this script in this way, just at least getting it started. You're not going to get bad points if it's not at 100 point. It's not completely done. We're doing this in a really quick amount of time. Everyone gets it done, just so you know. Everyone gets it done. But, we've got to start moving our heads over to thinking like this now. And then what do we have to build? And that way we can start building what are called assets. So assets are the things that are going in the room, and all those different parts. So this is something I want to see by October 6th. I need to see your storyboard, your second story, and this is the format that I want it in. Now, if you're doing a children's book, you aren't going to have probably panels on the page. You're going to have one image on the page, right? So it's just going to be page 2. You would probably erase this, and you would just have whatever this is going to be on page 2. And then instead of having dialogue, like in terms of like balloons, like you would in a comic story, you're probably going to end up with an actual narrator down at the bottom. And you'll be narrating the story. Or maybe the picture will be down at the bottom. And so you'll want to start to talk about that as you go through all your different pages. Does that make sense to everyone? So it's a little bit different. And that's why I'm doing it that way. We never used to do the children's book, but I feel like some people felt like the comic book was a little overwhelming. So they wanted to move it into like a children's book kind of story. But the comic book is great, and you can use things over and over again in a different way than you can in the children's book. All right. So does anyone have any questions about that at this point?
You said by October 6th, do we need to get this thing done?
You need to get it definitely started. And, you want to get, like, if you can get to, like, page 10, 12, that would definitely help you.
All right.
Because you want to.
If we're doing the comic, how do we know what pages they are?
There's 32 pages in the comics book.
Okay. All right. Perfect.
So, like I say, you can do, and when you watch the video on storyboarding, it's going to really talk a lot about how panels work and about how it all will fit together. And we'll talk again about storyboarding on Tuesday separately. And we'll talk and we'll look at videos on that. But I want you to start thinking about this over the weekend, because the script part is really important, just to get it down on paper. And you can just type away like, okay, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and then go back and break it up. You can take your original story and you can do, like at the top, we just have the character analysis. Sometimes on these scripts, people will also have what's called a nut paragraph. And that's the basic elevator speech. What are you going to tell somebody in less than 5 minutes? What's your story about? Right? So that helps you with sort of the arc of the story. Like this happens, then that happens, and this happens. Most story writers know the end. I mean, they know the ending, right? For the most part. When they're writing something, they know the ending. But no one else knows the ending except you. So what you have to do is figure out a way to make the ending interesting, to make the action interesting. So you're going backwards, right? You already know what's going to happen. So for you, it can be boring, but it doesn't have to be boring. The exciting part is like kind of going back in time and then building it and adding, embellishing, making the story interesting, thinking about page turns. Like, why would someone want to turn the page? Because they want to find out what's going to happen next, right? It's just like the cliffhangers when you see on series, like, when there's like a a mini series or something. You know, I'm sure all of you have done some, you know, streaming and movie nap time, as I like to call it. But you know, you get to a point where I got to watch the next one. I got to watch the next one. Why? Because they leave you in a place where you want to know what's going to happen next. Right? So that's how you want to set up the way your pages work too. So like you could do 2 panels on a page or 3 panels on a page. You know, it depends. But it's all, like I say, it's all in the video that I did put together for you. I really want everyone to watch these. These are very, very helpful for you. So it's like, you know, double duty. All right. So I'm going to stop there on, you know, just how we're going to set up our script.